So if you want to accept that. All right, thank you for everyone. For those who are watching the video, we just spent about 30 minutes going through just introducing ourselves and commenting on some of the challenges and the successes that we've had at teaching. And I just wanted to do that, not being recorded, so that people felt really comfortable sharing. I want to really make sure that we feel that this is a safe learning environment, that we can ask any question that we would like. And I hope that as we go through with these coffee chats, that you really feel that way. I think we've all struggled in incorporating this, and it's a new challenge for many of us, and it was great hearing everybody's challenges and successes. So I'd like to move into the topic that we have today, and that's using rhythm syllables, okay, with music. So whether it's with written music, do you always do? Sometimes these are some of the questions that we have. You know, how do you combine it with other counting systems, that sort of thing. So I just want to open it up, and I mean, if you have something to offer and share, feel free. If you have a question, yeah, just ask, and we'll go from there. Is everyone comfortable with the rhythm syllables? Do you understand the categories of them? Or questions about that? Everyone's so shy.
I have
Oh,
a question.
yeah, Rochelle, go ahead.
And this is simply that I haven't studied maybe the higher levels, but in working with, if in triple time, let's say 3/4, and then you have them all in triplets, like ba 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 ba. There's I think a different like it's using do da di da da di dee da di. Is that what you would do in that instance?
Okay, does anybody want to comment?
Okay, may I?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we generally use do-layer, da-layer, D-layer. We introduce the order subdivision.
So if you have three groups of two ways, and if it's do ta da ta di ta, but when they start to go into triplet, I think the syllables, you can correct us if we're wrong, do layer, da layer, di layer,
Yeah.
and then if they become three groups of 16 notes.
Do-layer, da-layer, D-layer.
I think so. That's how we read in the Gordon book.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused because I feel like the Bluestein book, I know, Greg, we had a conversation about this once, that there's some discrepancy between what's in the Bluestein book as far as the syllables and in Gordon's, and I just didn't know how you do that.
We only consulted the Gordon's because the Bluestein is like a translation of abbreviation of Gordon book.
Right, and would you say that some of what he does with the rhythm syllables is not what Gordon does, and what are the benefits of the one or the other? Like the dualea, is that's typical? Okay, so just this example, if you have the, ba 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 in triple time, then you go do. Sorry, say it again.
Do-layer, da-layer, di-layer.
Do-layer, da-layer, di-layer. Okay. Yeah, I'm just unclear about that level and how you incorporate those syllables.
I think Gordon listed them in the rhythm pattern book for sure. And in the book,
but also in the book.
In the book, it's there. Yeah. So in the music learning,
they're generally not there because they consider three kind of division, isn't it? Macrobit, microbit, and division. But there is also subdivision. Sometimes there is even more, and there is not possible syllable. I mean, at a certain point, I think the important thing is that they understand the relationship, the proportion, so they can go subdivide and subdivide, or
right. And so what is it? Sorry, what is it called? Like, one of the things about the rhythm that I really like is that you're telling the students this is a macro microbeat pattern, this is a division pattern. So would that be called a subdivision pattern? Is that what you call it?
I call it subdivision personally. I don't remember how, but I think so, because everything can be divided and subdivided and subdivided.
Right.
So then it's a question of prefix.
Okay,
Yeah, and
The
thank you.
important thing is that they understand the proportion. How he calls it, don't remember.
Yeah, I call it division of division. I know that
Division of division. Yeah,
and I
okay.
know that Marilyn in Music Moves for Piano, that's what she calls it, is division of divisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we start going into 16ths, like a really good example is like if you're doing piano RCM grade 3, the hornpipe by Purcell, because I'm teaching that piece right now. Ba 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 bum 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 ba 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 bum. Yeah, and so then I'm just using the division of division
Yeah.
patterns for that. Yeah.
At the end is that. And
See,
then when further division is division, division, division. But yeah.
I guess one of my questions with this, sorry, I'll leave it after this, but if you have triple time and if you're doing divisions of divisions, it would really be like 3 groups of 16th notes, let's say do a da a delia. But if you're doing triplets, like that's not divisions of divisions. What do you call that? And I don't know.
But actually, division depends. You divide
How
it
you
on 2 or
divide.
in 3 or in 4, isn't it?
Or
Actually,
5
2 or
or
3.
6.
So it's anyway a division or subdivision. Then you have to see how much you subdivide.
Right.
A division, you can make different kind of divisions.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Not at all.
So then, Roberto, what syllables would you use if, let's say, we're in 3/4 triplets?
Yeah.
And there's triplets all the way. So really, it's almost like it could be in 9/8. But so how would you count that?
I generally make them sing and chant, and I call them the division in this case. And I show them because at the end,
They see the microbeat. That's a starting
you
point.
know, I go back to Renaissance music, and they had fundamentally 4 kind of marking. So there was the tuple or the triple, and each one was divided in duple or triple. It's always this. And there was the circle, the perfect circle for the triple, the imperfect circle for the duple, with dots to make it more or less imperfect because 3 was always perfect. They will use only that, and they will understand each other. We go back to Hockenheim, Missa Prolazione, is all this way. Same melody, 4 different rhythms. And they start and they move differently. So I think we go back to what is the basic of music, and what impressed me most when I was following the course, also the Gordon lecture that I witnessed the first time, is that he would say, well, if you do pa, 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 you cannot really say by listening if it's 3/4, it's 3/2, and which kind of subdivision it has. He has a series of rhythm, and you can understand if it's duple or rhythm. All the rest is kind of semantic. Now this is my translation. Sorry about that. But at the end is the proportion of the things. So I don't even told them and labeled them very specifically. What I want them to know is how they work together. Because at the end, it's like in functional harmony system, you can have a lot of different labels, a lot of different systems. The important thing is to understand each other. And we call in a way, and they go to another person, it will call very legitimately in another way. So the important thing is that they understand how they work. So I don't worry too much about labels. Sorry about that.
And syllables? What syllables would you use?
If it's 3/4, each one is 3 triplet, and then I would say dualea, dulea, dalea, dilea. In this way. And they are,
it depends on the music.
But it depends on the music, yes.
But other patterns show up in that piece with 3/4 times.
And depends on the general pace and the general harmony rhythm, because it also depends how I want them to sing, or we want them to sing the entire phrase. It's a phrase of 4 or 8, how is possible to breathe into it? So, sorry, 3/4 can be very different.
Yeah.
In different cases.
Sometimes it can even be 3 macro beat, being each quarter note 1 macro beat, because there will be 6 tuplets coming up.
Yeah.
And other rhythmic variety that just needs a different kind of macro beat unit.
Yeah, there are some adagios Haydn, Bach, or something else.
And you have 30 seconds.
You have 50 seconds, you have 64, you have sometimes 128, and so on. Beethoven does that too. I mean,
yeah, so we have to pick what fits the music.
we have to see at a certain point there is no syllable possible. You say just pa 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 pa, or you say the symbol, the name of the notes. So they have movie rhythm, and they sing with solfège, and they understand how it is. When we are going much further, well, there is no way. But the important thing is they feel the pulse,
Yeah.
the breath of the music.
Can I just yeah, really agree with that. That one of the things that Dr. Gordon always said, and I know people say after a while, I think someone commented, everybody always quotes him, but he did have so much wisdom, and he said that rhythm solfège is useless without movement. That we're still, like, you can have a really great counting system, but unless you're incorporating movement into your learning process, the rhythm solfège is not going to be useful. And so what you said about feeling, like with my students with advanced music, I'm always thinking, where is the big beat? Where is the littler beat? Whatever you're feeling with that. And sometimes it's different for different students, and sometimes it's different for different pieces, but what do they feel for that? And then we'll use the solfège to help with maybe an understanding of the structure of it. But and I still remember Dr. Gordon saying this to me, once you've used it, you take that tool and you stick it back in your pocket and you save it for later. So it's only there in for specific purposes at the time, because you don't really want to be having to say those syllables in your head while you're performing your music.
Yeah.
It's only there in the initial problem solving or figuring out what the notation means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great.
Can I ask a question about movement and how you incorporate it? Do you incorporate movement in a way that would then like transfer to their instrument? Like with a string instrument, we have so much of the rhythms in the bow, and like how, or like, if you're a pianist, like incorporating the rhythm or incorporating movement in a way that then like they're feeling macro beats in the way that they would then apply it to what their instrument would be, and like how do you do that?
Okay.
I think it's universal that we feel a pulse with the combination of all the sort of Laban spectrum of movement, which is weight and space and flow and time. So we know that someone rushes a beat because they don't feel the space between the beats. So the movement that we use is going to help a student sort of internalize those four elements. And I feel like for any instrument, piano is actually maybe more difficult because we tend to lose the sense of the weight shift that happens with feeling a pulse when we sit down. It seems to be, one of those things, and then everybody gets nervous and then it's harder to feel it. So if you are standing, I think it's easier. So using movement, first of all, I think I use two mostly in my teaching. One is a weight shift, so like really standing and shifting and putting the pulse in your feet, and then tapping the beat, the microbeat somewhere else in your body, and then being able to verbalize the melodic rhythm. Those three things, once you can kind of coordinate that with your breathing, then things make it easier to perform. So that weight movement, but also never forgetting that flow is the most important thing that we do. So just using motions that involve flow, and then that probably helps with bowing as well. And I'm not an expert, but I've worked with lots of string players, just a sense of the continuous movement of music, that things don't just stop at bar lines.
I think that's one of the things that hit me early on when I was studying at Buffalo, is the movement aspect because with being a pianist, I mean, we sit so still. And then I realized, really, we should be audiating movement just like we're audiating everything else. So we need to be doing that flowing movement away from the piano, so then when we're sitting at the piano, we have that sense of what that flow feels like. And I find that that's huge in phrase shaping, in keeping the forward direction of the movement. And I know one thing that I do lots is, even I will get my 17-year-old teen boys using a scarf, and they're going to move with it, with the phrasing, as I'm playing. I usually do it first so that they can see what I'm doing as they're playing, and directing them, as they're playing, and then I will get them to do the same thing. And I find that that's huge, especially when it comes to rubato, so that their whole body is actually feeling what is happening with the movement. So I use the flowing, and I think of audiating movement in that way. And then, just as Jana, as everyone was saying, yes, you really feel the beat. Yeah, the macro beat. So I just find that with rhythm, there's just so many layers to it. And and it's trying to incorporate all of those in. Yeah. Anyone else would like to add or have comments on that?
I just going back to the rhythm syllables, the dualea and dualei. I'm wondering if students have a really good foundation of rhythm, and they have a good sense of the macrobeats and the microbeats, if they actually need syllables, because by the time they're doing triplets and stuff like that, they probably are a little bit more advanced, and they've been feeling the beat for long enough. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
I do, and I just stop me if you want me to stop talking. But yeah, I've thought about this a lot. So one of the things that is very interesting about even the whole philosophy of putting syllables to rhythm, so this would apply to all the rest of the systems, is that what we're doing is we're taking something that would be kind of at the discrimination level of learning, which is neutral, where we're doing neutral syllables. We can only sort of process a certain number of rhythm patterns, and using solfege helps increase the student's vocabulary. So we can never really learn the number of patterns that we need with ba 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 ba, that we would need at the inference level to really advance in our musical training. And so especially for students, this is going to help them a lot, just increase their vocabulary. And I think it's sort of a link to connecting what you maybe instinctively feel or hear, because I bet a lot of us didn't come through with a lot of rhythm syllables, or at least cohesive. So we obviously have huge vocabularies of music, but it just maybe helps a student with the connection between what they're hearing and then just a deeper understanding that takes them further beyond just sort of being able to imitate something.
Good, thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
I'm just curious whether you, like in the beginning for beginners, I know it's a lot of, free flowing movement to pieces, but I'm curious whether you get them to listen to the rhythm patterns as such, not moving to the beat in the beginning, but free. I haven't really read that anywhere, like I've, the free flowing movement, and then when you get to the rhythm patterns, you kind of move to the macro microbeat. But do you actually get them to listen and simply repeat them without moving to the macro microbeat at the beginning, just moving in free flowing motion?
Anyone want to comment on that?
I wonder if that also depends on the age group and then the physical coordination of the student. Because when we see pupils under age of 6, sometimes also under age of 8, when they are finding the macro beat, then the micro beat needs time. And then the two things, they don't find the coordination right away. So it may depend on how physically they are developed, and they will develop. And then we have to watch every student and see
Yeah.
what is easy and then what will take time.
Yeah, I'm specifically referring to like 5-year-old beginners who definitely don't have the coordination of moving to the macro microbeat together, whether it's beneficial to actually start listening to those patterns and just moving in whatever way they want to.
I think free movement is always healthy
It's
at the
always
beginning.
good. The larger, the better.
Yeah, and then when we start with organized rhythmic movement, then separate the micro from the macro for a little bit.
It helps too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And some of you have heard me share this story. But when I was studying at Michigan State in my very first professional development course with Gimmel, they were talking about a research project that they did with the community music school, and they took 2 groups of preschool children, and they did only what we would call flow activities with one group. So they did not teach them to do pulsating movement or keep the beat. They didn't use that movement with them. And then the other group, they did use pulsating movement. And then they had some way of testing them at the end of the trial period to see if the flow students were having difficulty finding macro beats and microbeats and moving to the beat. And they discovered that the 2 groups were equal when it came to finding the actual macrobeats and microbeats. So teaching with flow did not in any way disrupt a student's ability to feel it, which was really interesting to me. And that was an early childhood group. And what their sort of follow-up to that was, which I never heard the results of, but they thought that teaching with flow improves a student's sense of the phrasing and interpretation of the music. So it actually takes you a little bit deeper than just sort of making sure you can feel the beat, but really understanding the phrasing and the structure and the musicality.
Okay, any other comments on that or other questions?
Andrea just said in the chat, flow versus pulsating, and it is very interesting. One of the things that I still have a very clear picture of Dr. Gordon doing this in my very first time seeing him, and he was doing a combination of that. So he says, he used the phrase, put the beat in the air, and I love doing this with my students. So pulsating a beat, but you're doing it with a lot of flow, like you're moving, so you're combining the two, so it isn't sort of at that movement always one versus the other, but that is a movement that I find incredibly effective with my students. And you can do that sitting, right? You can just sort of put that beat in the air, put the macrobeat, put the microbeats in the air, pulse them all around in the space around you.
Yeah, and I think, Johnny, just to piggyback on that, when it comes to space, I think that's one of the things that we forget, even if we're sitting, because I've got space way up here, and I have space down by my feet. Usually, all our space happens within our torso area of our body. And so then even with students, no matter what activity we're doing, if I'm wanting them more moving into the space, because they will stay on the high end, what about down low? What about behind you and behind your feet? And so we don't even realize that until we start to realize, oh, if we think of the whole sphere that Le Bon had created, there's so much movement all around us. So with any movement activity, I really encourage students to use the entire space around them, not just, which is really easy within our torso area. Yeah. Any other questions or comments to add to that? Okay. Do we want to go on then and talk about selecting repertoire? So how do we go about, I guess too, there's a couple of questions here, sorry, on the rhythm. I'm just going to backtrack just a second. How do you combine Gordon's syllables with other like Kadai or metric counting and things like that? That was a question that was on the poll, so I don't want to forget that. Does anyone want to comment or address that? How do you incorporate that along with other counting systems?
I guess I can just comment briefly, just a couple other thoughts. I started with the Kodai system as a child, so I was familiar with that. And in Alberta, I don't know about other provinces, but we certainly, that would be the system of choice for most people. So I would say a very high percentage of my students come knowing ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. And will often very proudly at about grade 3 or grade 4 start to show me that they know those syllables. And I did ask Dr. Gordon about that because I really wanted to know, is that going to be damaging to be trying to use two systems? And he said no. Kids are capable of learning multiple systems, just like they can learn multiple languages. In my experience, however, because I am very careful not to say don't do that one. So I often kind of translate back and forth, and sometimes have talked about it as being a difference in where they came from. So we talk a little bit about the Kodai system as originating in Europe, and the do-day system sounds a little bit like Italian. So we're using Italian syllables or sounds when we're using that. So I just say it sounds different, and we don't talk about it beyond that. But my students often do end up preferring it, using the do-day, and it's probably just because I use it all of the time. One of the things, and Josina, you could jump in with this because you've attempted to use Takadimi with your students, with younger students. So you can maybe comment about how you found that, because Takadimi is now become, I think, more popular among Kodai teachers, and we use it at the university where I'm a sessional instructor. For college students. But I don't want to put you on the spot, Josina, but if you have anything to kind of express about your experience with that versus using the Gordon process system.
Right. I used Takadimi when I was teaching pre-MLT. I think the past year I haven't been using it. I've been using Due Day, and I like it better. It's more universal, I think. Yeah.
Good, thanks. I know I don't mix them. I just stay with the beat function counting, and I think it's more natural. And I know with my son, because he's doing the rhythm syllables with me, he has done the Kodai syllables in school, and then with band he does the counting system. And so I know when they were starting to do rhythm with Kodai, he just said to me, I just wish everyone would teach the rhythm the way you do, Dad. Because that's how he was introduced to it, and so he was familiar with it. And then he practices up here in one of the bedrooms on his tuba, and so I'll every now and again hear him using the rhythm syllables as he's working out a rhythm passage. So that's his preference. They can learn more than one, and I think it's just more natural. My wife, she's an ORF specialist, so she has her level 3 ORF, has been teaching ORF for years and years, and before I moved my studio into the basement, I was teaching on the main floor, so she hears everything that goes on. And one night at supper she goes, you won't believe what happened today. I started using Due Day with my students. And I thought, oh, I'm going to convert her yet. But I think that just showed how natural. That's what I took from it, is just how natural it is to use the beat function syllables. Yeah, with that. So I just thought I would share those stories, with you. Okay, any other comments?
I pre-MLT I was using like counting like 1 unit, 2 unit, and like numbers kind of, and syllables. And then I also have students where we were going through this method book, and they were doing we were doing also the tatas and the teats, like I can't remember, tatis and stuff. And then now, because of MLT, I started introducing the the due dates and stuff, and she picked it up totally fine, and her siblings too. And actually I think her rhythm improved actually more because of this, because it was, I don't know why, it was just more confusing doing it numerically and other syllables wise. Yeah.
Great. Okay, any other rhythm questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, selecting repertoire. Okay, outside of curriculum, I know a lot of us might be using Music Moves for Piano or the Jump Right In series. So what is your process of going through to selecting music that is not in those books?
Okay, may I? So we fundamentally develop our own repertoire. We avoid all the other Buddha system, and we wrote our own.
You did.
I did. Well,
Yeah, I learned them, but you did.
and so yes, we wrote a collection of 50, actually more, tune in various meter, in various mode, and they start with that.
Yeah, and then they transition to standard repertoire, early works of Haydn and the Anna Maddalena book, and Bartók, of course.
Bartók, and then Schumann, etc.
Yeah.
And we avoid very accurately all the RCM syllables and things like that. We made a kind of religion out of it.
No, we use the syllabus, but we
well,
don't
we use the syllables, but
series.
not the celebration series. Yeah. That's it. And yes, and they start to do these other things, the literature of the music, when they are arriving or reading fundamentally. Because for them, all the tunes of the book, we have fundamentally organized in a digital platform, a series of video in which we sing the material.
So they don't see the playing, but they learn the sounds and the rhythmic movement first.
Typically, we have for every tune, we have 4 clips, the melody and the bass line in neutral syllable, and the melody, and for piano, of course, and the melody and the bass line with solfege syllables. And that's what we did.
So that's our substitute.
I know I met you in Chicago at the Gimel conference in 2015, and I knew that you were working on it, and I said, "Oh, is it ready yet?" And you said, "No, it's not ready to be sold yet." So now I'm going to ask you in 2021, is it ready yet? Is it ready to be sold that we can buy and work on it?
It's ready, even if we are still working on it, because I'm writing a series of pieces for the left hand. Starting, so yeah, this is it. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh wow!
Where is it? Okay, you have to center.
I have to go here. Yeah.
Okay, open.
Here we are, and here there are typically. This is a page. There is the music one side and keyboard map to map,
they can do
and music, so they can improvise pattern. They can write the pattern in the tonality, organize it. So we did all these kind of things.
And then the tonal and rhythm
and we
pattern.
even invented. We wrote patterns.
You did.
For rhythm, in harmonic, and we recorded also that, and so on.
Oh, great!
And so this is what we did.
So, do you have this on? Do you have a website that we can direct people to?
The website, we generally print on demand for our students.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so maybe what I'll do is afterwards I'll email you to get some information, and then I can share that with everyone if they're interested. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you went through the process of putting this together, what guidelines? What was kind of the guidelines or the process you went through in deciding what are you going to do? What are you going to put in there? How are you going to do that? Because I think even knowing some of those will help us in knowing how we can select music outside of the books or music from our other millions of books that many of us have in our studio, to use.
So how do we do? Well, fundamentally, the whole thing was starting because students were coming. And, okay, what do we play now and what do we sing? And so I started to write for a particular student in a particular moment of his development. So he was just at the beginning able to
3 fingers.
3 fingers only. Okay,
And
so
then
there will
4
be something
fingers.
major or minor in this way.
And then 5 fingers.
5 finger, it goes this way. He starts to make dislocation, etc., movement through the keyboard. And so I wrote accordingly. He needs more minor, he needs different modes. So I start to put more in different modes. And we were using also at that time a lot of more classical folk tune repertoire, like, I don't know,
Mary Had a Little
Mary
Lamb.
Had a Little Lamb, of course, but also
Green
Sleeves and whatever you want. At the end, you say, well, it's possible to write
In
anyway
those modes.
in different modes, in different rhythm, and so it was done little by little.
And I think after some dozens, and we realized the left hand needs melodies.
And so we start to write for because there were a few, but
Not
too
enough.
little, not enough.
Minority. Left hand is not in the spotlight.
So in the reality, is something that, well, yeah, it's published, and the students in 1 year from now, they will have a different book anyway. So there is not a second edition. There is always a new edition. This is what is.
And then your selection, because of students, they start pretty young. So their hands, their body coordination need time to grow. So you avoided chordal writing. So not a lot of 2-3 note chord, just because they can barely reach.
What interests us is to have them develop the capability of hearing 2 different lines at the same time. So it's all conceived in a way that you can sing both lines, and you can start to hear, play one hand and sing the other, and
that's
switch.
Challenging.
And it's very challenging, but kids of 5 years old can do it very nicely. So
yeah. So that's a repertoire that we're using, and it's still growing because each student is like a teacher.
Yeah.
And their challenge is our challenge.
Each student has a different need. So if something is needed, well, we just
make
do
another
it.
one.
Yeah. Something like that.
Oh, great. Oh, that's exciting.
Okay.
Good.
Can I just ask you, did you, on the rhythm side, because that's maybe one of my main criteria when I'm looking for repertoire, is that I really want the rhythm to have, especially in the very early levels, to have a not too much diversity in it. Did you take into consideration the rhythm learning sequence when you were writing the pieces?
I think the divisions show up.
So yes, in general, since anyway it's based on you can find pieces, complexity of rhythm. I mean, okay, the taxonomy of the rhythmic pattern is taken in consideration in the sense that we have not dotted the rhythm very much at the beginning. We have not elongation, we have not tied, we have not triplet. We start generally with macro, micro, and eventually division. The triple division arrives a little later. The duple division arrives practically immediately. Generally, since anyway they learn to sing it before playing anything, they have no problem in keeping the rhythm, all the students.
And they may not even know that they're already singing pieces with duple division.
Yeah.
We just didn't tell them.
And we generally introduce the piece when they know how to sing a piece that contains division, then we add the division in the rhythm. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, any other comments on selecting repertoire?
Maybe I'll just make a comment. One of the things, this is very interesting. First of all, what you're sharing about what you've done. Congratulations for putting all that together. That's incredible. I'm very inspiring to hear about. One of the projects that I'm sort of trying to do with my students, because I'm combining a number of different curriculums, especially with now this new knowledge of MLT, and trying to select repertoire from the Suzuki and from the RCM and from other, since I teach violin, fiddle books and different things like that. one of the things that I've noticed over the last 25 years of teaching is that, if you follow the curriculum, you go from piece to piece in the Suzuki books, let's say, there's specific times and pieces where the students always struggle. And basically, 95% of students don't like this section or struggle too hard with this piece. And over time, you notice those things, and it's like, okay, well, why then do I continue to do that? If I know here it comes, every student's going to spend the next 2 months not liking what they're doing because of the way these pieces have been laid out. I've been trying to think, okay, what are the purposes of those pieces, and how can I find that same purpose in other pieces that I know students enjoy? Because there's certain pieces that students, 95% of them are going to enjoy this piece. So I've been kind of putting them together in that way, thinking what are the technical and musical elements here that I want the students to learn at this point, and how can I find pieces that are actually enjoyable for them to play, or maybe some of the pieces, I think in the Suzuki repertoire especially, all of a sudden the next piece has like 10 different new concepts, and then you'll have a piece with no new concepts, and I think there's a bit of, I respect Shinichi Suzuki very much, but there's problems in that progression when you're just simply doing that progression. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking those 10 concepts and saying, okay, what are those 10 concepts? How can I find 2 of them maybe in another piece, or one of them, put a few different pieces together then before they learn this piece, so that they've actually had a gentler introduction to those concepts. So those are some of the criteria that I'm using to put together a scope and sequence that's a bit different.
That's great. What a lot of work. Yeah.
That's wonderful, Rochelle. And I was thinking about one of the last times we heard Dr. Gordon talk. He encouraged forward thinking within the music learning theory. He said it should constantly be growing. And as you were saying, I think Roberto and Jennifer were saying, each student is a teacher. You learn from as you teach, and every situation is unique, and you keep growing. And that's the exciting thing about it, is that it really isn't this closed body of work that now we're supposed to follow all the rules. Now we start to explore, and I think even Suzuki would have supported that. Like, let's keep growing as we uncover more knowledge or more experience. How can we make this, the intent is not to prove someone wrong, but to help our students grow and to keep spreading music and increase the ease of learning and lifelong music involvement.
Great. Yeah, I think just with some of the comments from before, and I think I've shared this with some of you, I think my best ideas come from my students. Yeah, when I'm teaching, and so yeah, I really do feel that they're teachers. I know even with myself, because I've gone through and started going through and looking, okay, what other pieces can I give them, what longer pieces, and I didn't realize, because I was using Music Moves for piano, and then I gave a piece from a different book to a student, and he said, oh, my first piece, and I just thought, isn't that interesting? Because we have been learning these folk songs, but for whatever reason, because it was longer, I guess he felt he wasn't playing pieces. So that was an eye-opener for me, just that comment that he made. And so then I started to delve into more, okay, what other pieces can we use? Like Jana, probably rhythm is one of the biggest things that I look at. I definitely look at repetition. Is there repetition, something for them to hang on to? And so unfortunately, some music, I feel that there isn't any repetition that's occurring. So in order to do the same, is this phrase the same or different? Well, they're all different. There's really nothing to hang on to, whether it's melodic or rhythmic or a repeated phrase. So those are kind of the items that I look at when I'm saying, okay, what will work with a student? And one thing that I've discovered is that because we're teaching to the individual differences of the students, I find that even though I might be in, let's say, music, moves for piano, Unit 17, Book 1, I may be able to give this piece to this student, but I'm not necessarily able to give that exact same piece to another student who's at the same level. And so I have found that interesting because for whatever reason, I mean, the one might be a couple of years older, so he has the technical ability and the agility to be able to handle some of that. So I think to go through and for me to have a prescribed list of, this is a piece I give every student at this level, I can't do that. I haven't managed that yet because I just find that there's just so many individual differences for them. I make notes in my books of what piece and who I have given it to at what level, but it's not always consistent that it happens every time. Yeah, that's just what I'm finding in the process. Yeah. Okay, any other comments or...
Just a comment on that reminded me, Greg, that I recently went through the Conservatory Canada prep book, which I use a lot with my little people. But just for my own systems, I guess, I just went through and I ordered them from what I perceived to be the easiest to the hardest pieces in that book. And it's actually been kind of helpful. It just in the table of contents, I can just quickly look. And of course, you're right, it totally depends on the kit. But generally speaking, there's just some that are very accessible. And it's interesting that there's some, like you say, that look easy. They're all quarter notes. Like in the new book, they had to substitute some of the Scott McBride or Christopher Norton pieces. And they look easy, but they're actually super hard because there is no repetition and there's no pattern in them. But that was helpful for me just to kind of have a general idea in my head. Kind of these are the first three pieces that are super easy in every kit, like Autumn Colors. We do that one really, really early. But I saved the 6/8 ones for later. So it's just ones like that. So that was just something that I did just in the table of contents that I found helpful for myself.
Any other comments?
I'm thinking of the rote repertoire project that Anne Catherine started up, and I think that was nice. She's just there's like a rote repertoire group on Facebook, and everybody can contribute to like, let's say 1 month is macro beat, micro beat, duplo meter, and etc. And it's like specific details, and I thought that was kind of nice. And she organized it all, so there's like a list of rote repertoire for specific elements of like whatever, like rhythm and things.
Oh, good. So are those being organized by Rhythm? Is that how she's doing it?
There's rhythm, tonality, but it depends on what that theme that month is. And it starts with the very basics. So with your, like macro, micro beat, duplo meter, maybe just using your tall finger, your like one finger. And then so every month it's a little bit different. Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, good.
And she puts it on an Excel sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on selecting repertoire or repertoire choices?
I have a comment. This is a journey I've just kind of started, so I'm having fun exploring different things. A little bit about me, I actually spent the past year and a half or so studying with Barbara Lister-Sink in North Carolina. So I was studying injury preventive technique and the Lister-Sink method. So I've really kind of reformed my idea of what technique is and what is safe for a student to do as they're developing. So something I've been doing is working through the Celebration series books and looking at pieces according to the movement patterns. And I've found they're kind of all over the place. So if you're familiar with the Lister-Sink method, things are grouped according to basic strokes, which is just a stroke with one note, and then 2 note, 3 note, 4 note. And I found that some of the very early pieces actually are quite complicated in movement patterns. And then some of the later pieces, I can find pieces in like level 6 books that are more simple in their movement patterns. So that's been interesting to go through, and I've been thinking of kind of leveling pieces that way according to their movement patterns, and then also going through the rhythm patterns. And then what's really interesting and enjoyable for students as well, because a lot of pieces I've found that are more simple according to movement patterns are kind of boring. So I've been on this journey of trying to find more interesting pieces, and I have found some beautiful ones, and then thinking about writing some as well, because there's just a real lack, I find, especially in the earlier levels. And Music Moves has been actually really great for that too. I think Music Moves has been really conscious of that too.
Justina. Okay, I think we have 15 minutes left. I thought 90 minutes was going to go by so fast for us. And so I know that we wanted to have some time just for chit chat and general questions, or just general comments, those sorts of things. I wanted to say that we'll try and do that with our coffee sessions, is that we'll have the discussion for an hour, and then the last hour just kind of a free-for-all. And I did invite, I don't know if you're familiar, but I did invite Corey Mays from Gimel, from the Gordon Institute of Music Learning. He was willing to come and join us today, and I said, no, not today. This is our first time meeting. Maybe we can do it at another time. And so he will come and talk to us in February, in the February meeting, just the last half an hour I'll give him. And so he can talk to us about, if you're interested in knowing more about Gimel, the Gordon Institute of Music Learning, you can become members of it, and so the benefits of becoming a member. And I know that some of us, I think when we were doing that informal discussion, we were talking about international chapters. So I asked him to kind of give us some information on if, let's say, we as Canada wanted to become an international chapter of Gimel, what is involved. And I figured it was a fair bit process, and so he gave some information. So he'll kind of talk about that, and I said to know the benefits. And then at some point, we as a group collectively can decide, is this something we want to pursue, or is it something we'll wait for on down the road? I think it'll be a process of probably 3 to 4 years in order to become a chapter. I know they have the different steps and stages to go through with that. So I'm not sure what the benefits are, and so we'll invite him, and he can share that with us, and then we can decide at a later date. We aren't deciding in February at all. I would like to give time, and so just to see how all of this evolves as we go through. So I thought I would mention that, just to let you know that that'll become part of our process, for the February meeting that we have. But I want to open it up for a chit chat now. I know that Boyan, you had a question. Do you want to reiterate your question that you had at the very beginning, and then we can have a discussion on that?
Yeah, my question was, working with students on the spectrum, what are some, I guess, best practices in working with them, especially within the MLT context?
So anyone have comments?
I was thinking that probably when we talk about teaching to individual differences, we're talking about just a really general, broad spectrum of students that we have. And then we have students that are really distinctive learners. And that poses even more of a challenge because, they always say if you've seen one student with autism, you've seen one student with autism. You just cannot, so it's kind of a difficult question, I think, for all of us. And I have students that I think the easier students to teach are the sort of average learners that seem to not move either too slowly or too quickly. The ones that do learn quickly are actually some of the most challenging, because they tend to rush beyond certain foundational principles, and you know that they're missing something, but their eagerness to play or their eagerness to learn, surpasses your ability to teach them sequentially. So I'm sympathetic. I'm not sure that I have any real answers, except that that movement, as much as possible, finding movements that are comfortable for a student, can really help. I love Scott Price, and so he would be someone I would direct everybody to if you're wanting to delve in. He's made a study of it, and lots of his graduate students continue to work. So he's really an expert on it, and there are some other people that I would go to. All I can say is that music learning theory provides so many great answers and solutions to working with special students, for sure.
I have a student who is on the spectrum. He's 5. I also have a student who is strong ADHD, but I really wonder if he's on the spectrum as well. So with and they're both, well, one's 5 and one is 6. I find that because you have to kind of know with them what exactly are their strengths and their weaknesses, because they're all so, like Janice said, you've met one. So with my 5-year-old, math and reading, he's very high in. Okay, so he's gifted in that area. Finger dexterity, is a challenge, and so that's what they're really working on with him. And so I have him in the keyboard games, so it's lots of motions. His mom is always present, and the adult is always present with him. Now that I'm teaching online, it's in some ways it's an advantage, because if something happens on the other end, I don't have to feel that I have to address it with that. So, and with him, the transitions are not an issue, whereas with other students, the transitions are huge. They're massive. And I know that I had another boy who was on the spectrum, so I always kind of had to outline what we were doing, because sometimes he would want to do the next thing. For me, I'm really flexible in my lessons. So if that's what they're wanting to do, then that's what we'll do. I'm thinking I've got 30 minutes. I want to maximize the 30 minutes that I have. I don't want to undermine the parents, though, in the process of it. And so sometimes the boy, I will ask for something and the students say, but I want to do such and such. And so if the parent doesn't interject and say, no, he asked you to do this, then I'm willing to take the boy's suggestion. Or I will say, you know what, after we do this, then we'll do that. With some of them, I will say, what would you like to start with today? Do you want to start with your pieces, or do you want to start with the movement? And so I will give them choices. So, I mean, it depends on the student. I don't think you can give a prescribed, for any student, but those are things that I have found that really help. So if I know that transition is an issue, then I know to say, after we're doing this, then we'll do such and such. And so then that helps with them. With other ones, the transition isn't an issue, but then there's other things that happen. So those are just some of the tips that I have found and tricks. And I think being in contact with the parents lots to know, okay, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they find challenging? Has been really important for me. Yeah, anyone else have comments?
I missed the question, some of the comments in the beginning, but I just wanted to add, I had a very interesting conversation with a student at a university in Winnipeg that I happened to meet this fall. And she has some students on the spectrum, and she's been wanting to develop, like, this is more in terms of reading, But she said she noticed that some of the ways that the music looks to, and she's a piano teacher, to her students are problematic in the way they process, and that she's wanting to develop a resource that is a changeable, like as in you could put the piece in there and you're able to make it bigger, to make the bars longer or shorter or however it is. And she learned a lot of that. She's very young, but learned a lot of that from just simply asking this student, autistic student that she has, what do you need it to look like in order to help you? And I thought it was just a very interesting conversation. And someday she wants to have a website with resources and kind of movable staff, or I don't know quite what the vision is, but if any of you are interested, I could put you in touch with her.
Speaking of reading, I'll just share this story. I had a student, well, the one on the spectrum, because he didn't start until November, so started quite late. So then it was after Christmas, because we were working on the jack-o'-lantern. I think it's in the keyboard games A. And so I always change things up when I'm working with them. And so it's just, if you aren't familiar with the piece, you're basically just playing the groups of black keys going up the keyboard and coming down. So, I mean, visually, the notation just looks like a little bit of a mountain type of thing. And so then we went through it and did that, and then he was playing it well, and I thought, okay, I said, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the jack-o'-lantern upside down. We're going to put him on his head, and we're going to start from the top and go down. So he grabbed his book and he literally turned it upside down. But I thought, that's perfect, because then, just visually you can see how the notation is working, with that. So, I mean, some of those things, I laughed because he did that, but I mean, I thought it's perfect. It's perfect with what he did for a pre-reading activity. Yeah. So I thought I would share that in case you ever want to use that with someone.
I think with the student that I'm talking about, because he learns very, very fast. Like, I mean, there's like, I assign and it'll come back in, like more or less finished product. Not really, but you know what I mean? Like he'll have everything on the page done. And so I'm trying to incorporate a little bit more movement and a little bit like of a, like technical work. And he's so brutally honest. So he'll be like, oh, he's not interested, right? Like it's such a honest response, and I get it. And so I can't spend too much time on it, and yet I don't feel comfortable just not doing it at all. At the same time, like if I sing for him, or if I do certain things in a way that for him sparked an interest, he will like very genuinely laugh. And so the responses are very, very honest, and that's in some ways a guide, but doesn't mean I know how then I can work with that. Like I think that's where I feel stuck. I'm like, okay, so you don't like to move. What do we do? Like,
does the student enjoy improvising or creating new pieces out of it?
So I've only had 4 lessons with him, so I don't really know his capacity in that area, but I do know that he's taken some composition lessons in the past, and the mother had mentioned that, he will create certain things if she gets upset, like as a gift. And so I know that he's able to do that. I don't know his process in doing that.
I'm wondering if do you know what he does like? Or what his strengths are? Can you start with there and then gradually move from there to get him into other activities?
Can you give me some examples of like I did ask him what he liked to do, and it's just like short answer: music, piano. And I said, what about piano? It's easy. Like that's all I get from him. So I think verbally there's very little that I can ask about. And I'm in Toronto, he's in St. John, and so we're never going to meet really. Right. It's unlikely that we'll have that in-person interaction either, and so I'm not sure. Like what strengths should I be looking for?
Well, I mean, I think talk to the parents. Talk to the parents. What are his strengths? What are his challenges? So that you know what he's really good at. and to be able to do it. Like, I'm thinking, for an example now, I mean, my 5-year-old, it's easier to do things. I mean, so he really loved to do puppets for chanting, but maybe he didn't necessarily like to do movement. So after we do the chanting, now, what about if we get the puppet? You know, pretend that he's whatever movement activity we want to do. And so then I'm going from something that he's really comfortable with and likes to do lots to doing something that is maybe not quite so comfortable. And so then I'm using something external. Really, I mean, and this comes from ORF too, whenever you're using props or anything like that for movement, your focus is not on the prop. It really needs to become an extension of you. But a lot of times you can get people to do something if they are thinking, that they aren't doing the movement, but they've got some kind of prop that's doing the movement. So I'm wondering if even that, something like that might help him, with the movement. I would, I guess it's just a matter of talking to the parents to find out the strengths and weaknesses and moving from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, I knew our time would go quickly, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank all of you, for coming and sharing this. We will meet back, and I'll be sending out emails and prior to that. But I think our next meeting is February. Oh, I had it written here, but now I can't find it on my cheat sheet that I had. Oh, February the 19th. Session. Just to let those, as a reminder, I know I said this initially in an email, but for those in Saskatchewan, when our time changes in March, we're going to let everybody stay at their time, and we're going to be the ones that move. So we'll be meeting at 9:30 rather than 10:30 in March once the time changes. But I just thought it's probably easier to keep the rest of the world. We're used to having to adapt all the time with what we're doing. So we'll keep everybody else the same, and then we'll be the ones that move. And then I don't know if Manitoba, are you guys changing time or not this year? I've heard rumors that you aren't, so I don't know. So, and maybe it's just that.
I don't know. I haven't heard that we're not. Andrew, do you know?
I have absolutely no clue.
Oh, okay. So then maybe it was just a rumor then, that somebody from Manitoba shared with me. All right. If you aren't receiving emails from me, because I do send out the emails, don't hesitate to send me your email address. I know some of you, it's just on Facebook, on the Canada MLT Facebook page. If you aren't a member of that, you can also join that as well. But if you would like to receive emails from me, it's easier for me actually to send emails than to remember, oh right, I need to go back and to add that to the Facebook page. But feel free to send me your email address. And my email address is just gregorykchase@gmail.com. And then that way it will always be included. All right. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's wonderful. I think this is exciting to be able to do this and to be able to meet with other Canadians. And I know that we said that in our initial meeting. I think sometimes we have a few more challenges with our exam system and stuff that we're working with. And so it's nice to be able to meet collectively, and to discuss things. So thank you very much. Okay, so we will see you all hopefully in February. If you know others who are interested, feel free to share the emails and the information. That's never an issue at all. And then I will upload this, and then I will send a link out to where it's located. I need to figure that out, and so then you can come back and view it, or others will view it as well. Okay, have a great month, and then we'll see you in February.
Thanks,
Stay
Greg.
safe.
Bye.